conspiracy circles are going crazy right now because Donald Trump's trusted people are at the Bilderberg conference in Chantilly, Virginia. And at the same time, Donald Trump has announced he wants to pull the US out of the Paris Climate Agreement. So now there's this whole bunch of confusion out there as to what Trump's intentions are. Is he fighting the elites? Is he not fighting the elites? Is he part of the elites? And in this video, I'm going to explain to you what's going on here. So for the last couple of weeks and months, we saw this back and forth, this supposed back and forth with Trump and the Paris Climate Agreement. So it's the same kind of back and forth we've seen several times from Trump, and everybody's asking themselves, you know, is Ivanka telling him something? Is Jared Kushner telling him something? What other advisors are telling Trump something? What is he gonna do? And in my estimation, this is just obfuscation. Donald Trump is part of the elite, and there's the elite plans long term. They plan 50 years ahead, 100 years ahead, and Trump is only going to be president for 4 to 8 years. So the globalists, they don't want people to understand that Trump runs nothing. Trump decides nothing. Decisions are made for him. And so the globalists enjoy that confusion. They want that confusion to be out there, that people ask themselves, you know, what's Trump going to do and why is he doing what he does? That's one thing. So now, of course, people think, yeah, this is going to be good, new jobs, new industry, America first, by pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement. And Trump, from the first moment, said, I'm going to be the new Ronald Reagan. Well, who was Ronald Reagan? He filled his cabinet with insiders from Bilderberg and the CFR. He was a man of the establishment, but he presented himself as a man of the people. So Reagan did bring new jobs back. Reagan did deregulate, and he brought some industry back. But of course, he was always a globalist, and he increased the government debt. Same with Nixon. There's a lot of parallels between Trump and Nixon. So, Nixon, he presented himself as an anti-establishment guy, and the establishment back in the day pretended to hate Nixon, but then Nixon, he got a job at the law firm of Rockefeller's personal lawyer, made a bunch of money. The establishment pushed Nixon while publicly claiming to hate him. And then Nixon was installed in the White House, and of course he had to bring Kissinger along, who is now infiltrating the Trump administration, and all these things. And Nixon increased the budget. Nixon increased the size of government. He was so outrageous, bringing this to a whole new level, way, way higher than what he previously, before he was president, complained about. So, and then of course you saw Bilderberg media, such as the Washington Post, attack Nixon and then push him out of office, and you saw some other Bilderbergers push Nixon out of office. But they brought him into office, and then they removed him. And we might see the same thing with Trump now. He was pushed by the establishment. Publicly, the establishment claimed to hate Trump, and now they might push him out of office. It doesn't mean Trump is a nice guy. So if you don't remember all of this, what happened with Nixon and Reagan, I suggest you read some of the classic books like None Dare Call It Conspiracy by Gary Allen, or you read The Secret History of the Bilderberg Group by Daniel Esterlin, and he refers to Coleman in his books. So this is very old stuff, and you should know all of this. And, you know, all these alternative media guys, they should know all of this by heart. So these are the parallels right now. So Trump is going to be the new Reagan. I said this from the beginning. There's no reason to trust Trump. He's going to be the new Reagan. He's going to bring in all these establishment guys into his administration. He's going to bring new jobs back and deregulate and push the industry. But long term, the establishment wants to have the age of the robots and artificial intelligence, and 50% of all jobs are going to be gone. So the Paris climate deal was never binding anyway. Was never really binding. And it had all kinds of exceptions for the Eastern Bloc, the great competitor, China, India. This was not this was even less binding to her. It was not binding, really binding for everybody, but it had total exceptions for the Eastern Bloc. Why? Why would the Western establishment do that? So now you see leftists, citizens, and even some elites publicly complaining about what Trump just did, even though he doesn't decide anything. How can he pull out of the Paris climate deal? We're all gonna die, and and all this whining and bitching. Of course, we're not gonna die from CO2. And pulling out of the Paris deal actually fits the long-term strategy of Bilderberg in the CFR. And let me explain to you why. It has to do with the East-West conflict. Now, the Eastern Bloc was built by Bilderberg elites, Bilderberg corporations. And if you don't know that, you don't know anything, right? I mean, you just need to get some of the oldest books of investigative histories on Anthony Sutton and Gary Allen and all that stuff. You need to get these books, get this literature, read it twice, and then understand Bilderberg elites. They built the Eastern Bloc. They sold them all the factories, Fiat car factories, all these things. Ford Motor Company built the Soviet factories. Everything the Soviets needed, car technology, engine technology, plane technology, everything was given to the Eastern Bloc. So, and then they had the Cold War. And then the Cold War was declared to be over. And so over the last 25 years, the West has pretended to be weak and stupid and self-defeating. So the Western elites, Western elites have added regulations, and they destroyed business, and they pushed business out of the West. So the business went to China, and Western elites have ramped up the green propaganda. We're all bad, and we need to deindustrialize and cut emissions and cut industry. So why did Western elites do that? Why did they do that? And of course, one of the reasons, as people usually know, is that, of course, it weakens Western populations. It makes them poor, it makes them more dependent, and so that's where the elites profit. But while the West was getting weaker, while the elites in the West were making the West weaker on purpose, the Eastern Bloc was pushed. The Eastern Bloc was helped. So global elites, Western elites, made the Eastern Bloc successful. And so, by acting weak, by pretending to be stupid, the West has given the Eastern Bloc reason to be arrogant and take on more risks. And now with Trump and the new East-West conflict heating up, now with Trump, the West suddenly shows its strength again and scares the Eastern Bloc and causes a lot of pressure and trouble for the Eastern Bloc. You see, over the last 25 years, or the last, let's say, 40 years, because Bilderberg guys like Kissinger or Rockefeller, they opened the markets to China. They opened our markets to China. The Western elites could have decided, no, we're going to be the only powerful bloc in the world, and China is going to stay a third world country. We're not going to sell anything to the Russians, so they fall apart. They could have decided that, but they didn't. They built up the Eastern Bloc. And so now, after 25 years of deliberate weakness, now the West presents itself as strong and says, now we're going to cut all this help to the Eastern Bloc. We're going to pull out of this climate nonsense, and now we're going to be strong again, and we're going to be so strong that Russia and China are going to be panicking. Seriously panicking. So this is like the oldest trick. That's what, you know, pool players do, or chess players, or poker players do. So the best player, the best player, deliberately plays a few bad rounds. Best player acts like he's pretty mediocre or even bad. So then the other players, they think, oh, this guy is pretty easy to beat. Let's bet more money on this, you know, let's raise the stakes. And then, of course, when the stakes are raised, the best player suddenly shows what he can do, and he fleeces the other guys. This is pretty much what we see on a global scale today. So this is what you call a hustle. The oldest trick in the book. So Western elites, they can decide if there's going to be a boom phase or a crash phase. Western elites, they have so much money and they have so much assets, they can do that any way they want. You know, yes, Western countries are broke and there's new bubbles, and if the elites won, there's going to be a crash. A huge crash, not such a big crash, or 3 smaller crashes, or there's going to be a boom phase. If the elite wants it to happen, they can create a boom phase. The Eastern Bloc cannot do the same thing. They just have to keep their head above water, right? So the Global Warming Policy Foundation warned a while ago that the Paris climate deal was a blank check for China and India. The Eastern Bloc was allowed to increase CO2 and increase industry, while Western industry was suffocated. So now that Trump is play acting the part of the president, the elites in the background, they can launch the next stage of this hustle. So the Eastern powers, the Eastern superpowers, they were led to believe they were going to take over. They were led to believe they had it all and they could get it all. But now Trump is going to bring the jobs back and the industry back. So the citizens, the people of the United States, they're going to like the establishment again. They're going to like Trump because he brought them the jobs back, supposedly. And so they're going to fall on their knees and pray to Trump. And if the elites start a new war with Korea, then of course people are going to follow Trump blindly. And this is all very, very dangerous. You know, and a lot of media, they don't really understand all of this. They don't really read books. They don't get what's happening. They're always behind. First they said, hooray, Trump, he's the political messiah. Then they said, we don't really know about Trump, let's just see and wait. And then when the Syria attack happened, they hated Trump, and now they love him again because he pulled out of the climate deal. So a lot of alternative media, they're just setting themselves up and setting up the audience to spin anything that's going to happen over the next 4 to 8 years. So if something bad happens, you know, something bad for the people happens, then these alternative media outlets will say, well, the insiders have won this round against Trump. If something apparently good happens, then they will say Trump beat the globalists again. You know, they damaged the globalists. If Trump has to step down and leave the White House, then alternative media will say, well, Trump was the big hero, he's a tragic hero. He damaged the globalists, but now he had to go, and that's unfortunate. So it's always twisted, it's always spun. So now we see several of Trump's people this weekend at Bilderberg. H.R. McMaster, Wilbur Ross. But there's also Deutsche Bank, which saved Trump in the past, supposedly $300 million. So it's a Bilderberg company that saved Trump. And Wilbur Ross saved Trump in the past. He's now a Bilderberg member. And Mr. Ross saved Trump's casinos in the past. Trump would be broke without Bilderberg. Then Trump wants to give Blackstone the infrastructure of the U.S. So yes, the bridges are going to be rebuilt. The roads are going to be better, but it's all going to be Blackstone and the Saudis. Then Carlyle Group. The Carlyle Group is usually represented at Bilderberg. And Trump just made a Carlo guy one of the most powerful people at the Federal Reserve. And then, of course, you have Henry Kissinger, who's infiltrating or has already infiltrated Trump's administration. So there's more links to Bilderberg in the CFR with Trump than most people realize. And the president doesn't decide anything. Trump is a single guy. He's vulnerable. His family's vulnerable. His whole fame and money depended on Bilderberg companies that saved him. He was encouraged, like everybody was encouraged before 2014, to make shady deals with shady Russians. But now, of course, that is used against him, even though Bilderberg has much crazier Russian connections. That is used against him. So Trump is surrounded by insiders. He's surrounded by traitors. They can destroy him at any moment if they want to do so. Trump doesn't know anything about politics and military. He doesn't even want to read his intelligence briefings, and he couldn't even tell what's behind these briefings. So it's much more likely that he and Kushner and the others spied on the Russians than the other way around. Very important to understand. So then, people are still asking, what is Bilderberg at its core? Bilderberg is two things at its core: psychopathology and intelligence spycraft. Those two things. So the elites are pretty evil. They pick their successors, and they're using spycraft. That's pretty much it. And of course, mainstream media is not mentioning and explaining these two elements, and neither is alternative media. So anything I know about the intelligence world, spycraft, everything I know about psychopathology, psychopaths, narcissists, how their brain works, how their personality works, how these guys work in groups. All these important things that I know, I have not learned from conspiracy media. I have not learned from conspiracy theorists. So, and if you don't know about these two things, if you haven't read a ton of books about these things, then you can't understand Bilderberg, you can't understand Trump. So, of course, if you don't recognize Trump's signs of narcissistic traits, if you don't recognize Trump's entanglements, if you don't get the smell of intelligence work there, you know, it can't be 100% proven, but there's a strong smell of intelligence work there. Yeah, you don't understand it. You don't understand anything. So all these deals with the Russians, and not just Trump's deals with the Russians, it's just a lot of Western companies, powerful people. Deutsche Bank just got fined for laundering Russian money, but don't tell me there wasn't spies crawling all over these things, right? Because Western spies, they want to get Russian defectors. They want to make deals with Russian powerful people to get their information and to move them over to the West and hide them. This will also create paranoia in Russia, so nobody trusts anybody anymore in Russia, so that makes them weaker. Bilderberg has the power over war and peace, boom and bust. So there's no ignoring it, there's no running away from it. Our forefathers, they still had a multipolar world, so when things were bad in Germany, and I don't mean the Nazi era, I mean way before that, when things were bad in Germany, millions of Germans went to the United States, such as the grandfather of Donald Trump. For a few coins, you can just hop onto a ship and, you know, go to America, and then you would find the exiled German community, you would get a job, and you can establish yourself. It's not possible anymore. There's four superpowers today, and all the other states are just client states. So we have to face Bilderberg, we have to face these elites, and Bilderberg has been around, these elites continuing the British Empire. They've been around for hundreds of years, which is impressive, I have to admit, because usually elites are so psychopathic or so narcissistic, they're self-defeating, they're not stable, right? Generation after generation, it gets more chaotic, and there's war between the families or inside these powerful families. But you know, the Western elites, they have made it so far over hundreds of years. Of course, their different strains go back further, but Yeah, this is very impressive, but they're still human. You know, they use spycraft and they know a lot about psychopathology, and they have known for a long time. Hereditary psychopathic traits, genetic traits, that's why they marry among themselves. Narcissism, certain way of raising their kids so they become vicious or more vicious, and these genetics, they manifest themselves in a more pronounced way. They know all about this. And we, the people, we usually don't know anything about this. We don't know the spy world. We don't know what evil really is. We don't know what science has actually found out about evil. Usually, we, the people, don't know anything about this, and that's why we've been failing so far. So it's not that complicated to learn these things, to learn about how evil works, and to learn about spycraft. There's a lot of good literature out there, so people can get to an okay level, and if a lot of people can get to that level, we can actually win this thing. So it's just like with driving a car. Pretty much everybody can get a driver's license, learn how to drive and operate a car safely. It doesn't mean you have to be able to design an engine or you have to design a transmission. That's just for the experts. All you need to do is drive a car safely. And if you want to buy a used car, then you might want to get a professional opinion on this. But you yourself, you can look for obvious warning signs. So same with spycraft, or same with actual evil. You can understand enough of it. So it's not as simple as waiting for a Donald Trump or hoping that China or Russia is going to fix everything. It's very dangerous to believe that, Russian espionage is going to save us. It's dangerous to believe that hackers and leakers are going to save us. Only we can save the world by using what we have to the fullest extent. So the elites are spying on us, we spy back against them. The elites figure us out, figure our personalities out more and more in a more detailed fashion. So nowadays, with social media, with just a few clicks, they can figure us out almost entirely, our personalities. It's called psychometrics. There's a video on my channel about it. So they figure out our personalities and they spy on us, so we do the same against them. We figure their personalities out and we spy on them. So they know who's a narcissist among us. They know who's a psychopath among us. And they can use that. So Alex Jones has been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, according to reports. He's never refuted that. So that's why he can be used. That's why Alex Jones can be used to damage the people. So, and the average person out there doesn't even know what narcissism really is, what psychopaths are. People have never learned to see the warning signs and to understand all of this. Now, every part of society is dominated by narcissists and psychopaths. So, of course, the conspiracy circles, the conspiracy culture is not an exception. It's dominated by narcissists and psychopaths. There's also emotional instability and schizophrenia. So we need to learn this, and we need to take the right measures. And once we understand spycraft, once we understand evil, then we can actually start winning. It's not winning if you elect a narcissistic, probably even worse guy as president like Donald Trump. That's not going to help us. That's not winning for us. A narcissist with high-level connections and who is so entangled. That's not winning. So if you out there teach somebody else or get somebody else interested in spycraft, good books about espionage, if you get people into the psychology of evil, or the interesting brain research on evil, there's good books out there that everybody can read. You don't have to read every complicated study on this, but if you get people to understand psychopathology and you get people to understand spycraft, all else will follow. These people will look at the world in a completely different way, and they will get conspiracies from then on. it's not so useful if you approach people with singular instances, singular cases of supposed conspiracies or likely conspiracies. Because most of these cases are not even confirmed, they're just being worked on. So, somebody else might think, well, that's kind of an interesting case here, but I don't really know, and it doesn't tell me anything about larger, the bigger way of conspiracies, if they work or not. So teach people about spycraft and psychopathology, and then they will get it. They will look at everything in a different way, and they can never go back. So, I never learned anything about narcissistic personality disorder or psychopaths. Never learned anything about this in the alternative media. Never learned any about this from Alex Jones. I've never learned anything important about espionage from Alex Jones or anybody else in the conspiracy circles. And that's astounding. So then you have the membership list. And be aware of this. The membership list of Bilderberg is released very late when the conference begins. So most media, even alternative media, they don't have the time to actually look up each and every single name and who these people are, what they've been doing, what they've been saying, and how they're interconnected. And what we do every year is I actually do that work. I actually take all these names from the Bilderberg list, I sort them to categories like military and security, banking, politics, and so on, and then I add information to every name. And sometimes it's that much information, sometimes it's just that much information. And so this year I've done that again on my German page. And I did not have the time this year to do it for my English website, eng.recenture.com. But here on the monitor behind me, you can see how that looks. So, starts with H.R. McMaster. Jens Stoltenberg, the leftist commie who ended up NATO General Secretary. Probably a spook. Was probably a spook from the beginning, snooping in the leftist circles. And so on and so forth. And then you have these security people, and then you have the politicians and all that. So this is really, really cool and interesting, and it takes hours and hours to do that, even when you're fast. So it's now Sunday, the last day of the conference. I had so much stuff to do. There's another terrorist attack, and there's all kinds of things in between. So I didn't manage to do the sorted, commented Bilderberg list this year for the English audience, but I'm going to do it next year. And of course, if you support us on Patreon, if you support us, then of course we can do a lot more English content, which is very, very interesting. I mean, I'm surprised nobody's ever done this. Nobody has been doing this for a long time. And so that's going to be something for next year. And, a lot of these members, they've studied at Oxford and Cambridge, which smells like spycraft, or secret societies. You get several important people linked to Donald Trump who are likely members of Skull and Bones. And then, of course, people are asking, what can I do? What can I do? I'm just a single person. I can't do anything against the elites. All this despair, or sometimes call it whining, where every one of us can do a lot. Every one of us can do a lot, and we can start that immediately, and we get immediate effects. So it doesn't matter how powerful these elites are, we still have the responsibility, and we can use that, and we can immediately start doing some stuff and get immediate results. So we can be active not just politically and in media. We have power over our own health. We have financial ways of resisting and securing ourselves. There's the psychological level we can work on, cultural level, all levels of human life. So if you out there want to resist the tyranny, if you want to resist, stop drinking alcohol. quit alcohol, quit smoking, quit drugs. This is a task that you can start right away, and you will get a dramatic improvement. The elites want you weak, dependent. They want your brain not to function properly. So beat that. Beat that agenda. So you do that. You start that today. Don't drink alcohol. Stop alcohol. Stop smoking. Stop the drugs. You get immediate results. Then fight other addictions. Get more energy, more money. Your brain works better. Next, educate yourselves about psychology, important parts of psychology, and psychopathology. Learn about narcissistic personality disorder. Learn about psychopaths. It's like learning how to drive a car. You need that every day in your life. And when you learn all of this, then you can start identifying fake friends, false leaders, bad influencers. You can improve your life instantaneously by cutting these psychopaths and narcissists out of your life. Immediate improvement of your life. And it's protecting you against the biggest control mechanism that the elites have, which is personality disorders. Biggest control mechanism isn't even banking or the media that lies to you. No. Biggest control mechanism in society is psychological disorders. The elite treat us like crap. So we start treating each other like crap, and we don't understand why we're treating each other like crap. So you need to break through this, and you can start today. Find some good books on that you can buy, that you can rent, stuff for free on the internet, stuff on YouTube. Learn about psychopaths and narcissism. Learn about that it's you can actually measure this in the brain. These people are just different. Has nothing to do with ideology. Has nothing to do with skin color or religion. So, if you cut out these evil people out of your life and you protect yourself against evil people getting into your life, you can do something. You can resist tyranny. You can resist the system. Then, of course, you have to understand yourself. You know, what kind of personality are you? Have you brought out your genetics? Have you been really you so far? Or have you used your potential? You know, what's holding you back mentally? Just do some proper work. If you've suffered severe damage and you can't handle it yourself, then go to a professional. But be very picky about what professional you go to. Careful with the pills, right? Then, sports, good food. You can start it immediately. So instead of using the Sunday to drink a case of beer and sit around, do some sports. Nothing too complicated. Just cardio, weightlifting in a safe manner. Doesn't have to be a fancy, trendy type of sport. Just play it safe. No injuries. Play it safe. Ask a doctor if you haven't done any sports in a long time if it's safe for you to do so. The elite wants you weak, so you can create and build strength that you can start immediately. And then media. You can support us and not support bad alternative media out there that just wants to rip you off and take your money. Then financially, you can do prepping, you can buy physical gold and silver, you can invest in index funds. Just play it safe. No gambling on the markets, because science has shown all that gambling is useless to you. You know, even the big shots, they can't beat the market and predict the market on a regular basis. Just do index funds, you know, and ETFs. So, and then learn about intelligence agencies, learn about spycraft. Then you start to think in a different way. You become more of an analyst. You know, you start in a conspiratorial way because that's how intelligence agencies think. And then when you've done all that, then you can try to build groups or enter groups and influence groups. But you need to do all that other stuff first. Because if you don't know narcissists, if you don't know psychopaths, then you will fail with groups. Because they always will get into the groups, and if they're not spotted early, they will wreck a group, they will twist a group, take over a group. So that's what you can do immediately. That's what you can do immediately. So, and then, is there going to be a war? It's pretty likely against Korea and some other wars. It's not going to be the end of the world, but it's going to be pretty hairy, and you need to prepare for that. And think about this. It's pretty strategic and useful for Bilderberg and the CFR. It's pretty strategic for Bilderberg right now to have a populist like Donald Trump in the White House, and let me tell you why. So, of course, the establishment always needs new wars to, exert control, to traumatize people, to cause more personality disorders, and also to make more money and to increase control and to train their own military. So these are the usual reasons for wars. But if you think ahead, the next war against Korea or something with China or a proxy war, if Jeb Bush had become president instead of Trump, then the establishment couldn't, conduct future wars that easily. Because Jeb Bush would just be seen as another Bush, another copy of his brother and his father. So a lot of conservatives would be pissed, and they would hate. A lot of conservatives would hate Jeb Bush, and they would not go along with the war. And the left and the right and the center in the population politically would come together again, like under George W. Bush. Very, very bad for the globalists. So Jeb Bush would not have been a smart president for Bilderberg. Hillary Clinton would have been a disaster. So imagine Hillary Clinton would be president now, and there's going to be a new war with Korea or somewhere else. Conservatives would be going insane, and leftists would be going insane because they voted for the Democrats, and they think Democrats mean peace. So people, again, would come together. They would hate the White House. They would hate the elites. And, this would be bad for Bilderberg. So Trump makes a whole lot of sense for Bilderberg as president because he's a populist. He nurtured that myth of draining the swamp and being against the establishment and being at war with the establishment. So when a new war comes with Korea or elsewhere, a lot of conservatives are going to support Trump, or even more conservatives are going to support Trump, and the left will go along probably because it's war and you need to go along. And of course, the left hopes that Trump will only be president for 4 years, and the next likely Democrat president will inherit that war, or the consequences of that war. So it makes a whole lot of sense for Bilderberg to have Trump. So, and Hillary, Hillary as president, she would have no control over angry white guys. Angry, patriotic, conservative white guys. Those patriots who have the most guns and who are the most, angry. Hillary as president would have no control over them. She would antagonize them. But Trump, he has a huge effect. Trump has a huge effect on these angry Americans, these white, armed, angry Americans. So that's why it makes sense for Bilderberg to have Trump. So that's it for this video. Please support us on Patreon. If we can get to a certain level on Patreon, I can do a weekly news show, live or not live. I can do a weekly show and expand that. We can do a whole lot on a small budget, so please support us on Patreon, like this video, comment, and subscribe to this channel.